Hey everybody, hope you guys are doing good this afternoon. Just got off the water here at Table Rock. Had a fish the moment on the water lesson today. And man, when I pulled the boat off the water, I said this would be a great time to talk to everybody about fishing in the wind in the wintertime and what the wind does to the bass in the wintertime, because today on Table Rock Lake, it was nasty. It was windy and it was cold. We had 20-mile-an-hour north winds, 30 degrees when we launched this morning. It didn't warm up that much. It didn't feel like it got very warm, and tough to fish in the wind as far as when it's that cold and it's blowing hard. So just wanted to give some tips, really some advice and some tips on fishing on those windy days, how the wind helps position or doesn't position the bass in certain ways based upon the direction and the speed of the wind. If you guys fish in the wintertime, it's all relative to what part of the country you're in. I mean, winter is this time of year, so water temperatures you're dealing with are anywhere between, mid 30s to in the 50s, depending upon what part of the country that you live in. But if you live in the part of the country where you're dealing with water temperatures in the 40s in the wintertime, which a lot of the man-made impoundments in the sort of the mid part of the country, they fall under that to some extent. A lot of, anywhere between like Ohio, even down into Alabama, you're going to have that water temperature. Here's a couple things that's going to help you out as far as understanding how wind positions bass. Now, one of the best wintertime areas that you can possibly fish anywhere on a highland impoundment or any man-made impoundment that has gravel, rock, boulders, what type of stuff, are secondary and main points. That is the key winter structure, because what happens is when you have secondary and main lake points that drop off into 20+ feet of water, you have bass using a lot of different water columns on those same points. You've got bass that if the water is clear, they suspend way out off the end of those points. They can suspend 10, 15 feet down over 50, 60 feet of water. They can be on the ends, they can be over submerged timber, they can be on the point sides, a lot of different places they can suspend. And also on those same points, you'll have a population of bass that is basically used in the bottom in those areas. They'll be in that zone of anywhere between 5 to 10 feet, and they're actually living on the bottom in the rocks, in the sand, in the gravel, whatever. And so you've got two different populations to potentially catch on the same point. Now, when you're fishing these points in the wintertime and it's windy, it's really critical to analyze the direction that the wind's coming from, particularly if the wind is over, say, 10 miles an hour. Because if you have wind that is hitting these points at over 10 miles an hour, it will position bass on certain parts of those points. The thing that you want to look for is if you've got, it doesn't matter what direction the wind is coming from on a point, you're going to have part of the point getting hit by wind, part of the point's going to have wind coming in like at a 45-degree angle or diagonally, and some of the areas is going to have the direct opposite direction of the wind. So what you want to do is you want to key on those sweet spots, what I call on the points, where the wind is coming directly into those points. And that could be on the side of the point, it could be on the end of the point, it could be on the, whether it be on the main lake side or the cove side of the point. But key in on those areas that is getting hit directly with the wind. Those are going to be the parts of that point that is going to be that's where the fish are going to be setting up on most all the time. Most of the time, what I found in the wintertime fishing when it's windy is that 75% of the point is no good, whether it be on the end or the side. You got 25% of it is good, that has that wind hitting it, directly into it, or just maybe at a slight angle. Another thing about that, it has a lot to do with your casting angle and how you can manipulate the bait the best. I mean, if you're fishing a jerk bait or an Alabama rig or a jig or a crankbait in wind that's like, 15, 20 miles an hour in the wintertime, it's very difficult to make a proper, accurate presentation if you're casting into the wind or to 45 or diagonally. That's why I like to cast with the wind all the time that you can in the wintertime. Has a lot to do with that. So anyway, just a quick little tip on the wind like that. Most of the time in the wintertime, I don't like wind. I like days that have just a slight, barely ripple on the water. That seems like to be the best times, particularly for jerk baits. But if you do have those days like we did today at Table Rock Lake, where you have that 20-mile-an-hour north wind, don't waste your time fighting, fishing around the entire point. You may pull into part of that point on the inside part of it, and you may have that wind hitting it just right. Fish those little key sweet spots and then move on to the next point. Don't worry about getting out there and fighting the wind, or fishing into the wind or stuff like that, especially when those bass are, shallower than 15 feet. That's going to be a big key deal. One of the big, mistakes I see a lot of people making in the wintertime, that particularly are jerkbait fishing, is they try to fish into the wind or at a 45-degree angle. And your efficiency is cut at least in half when you try to do that. Your bait doesn't get as deep. You don't have contact with the bait. Your bait doesn't have as natural of a presentation. So the biggest tip I can give you guys in the wintertime, on days like today we had at Table Rock to Lake, is fish with the wind. Fish those places on those points or the banks that you're fishing that's getting directly hit by the wind straight on. Make long casts with the wind. You're going to catch a lot more fish. You're going to get your bait deeper. You're going to have better feel with it. You're going to have better contact. Your bait's going to look more natural. So anyway, fish with the wind. Get those banks that are getting hit directly by wind, and it'll add up to a lot more fish in the wintertime. But like I said, that's the tip for today. That's what we found out on Table Rock today, and just quick little tip there, and hope you guys are doing good. See you.